Commander Vex-Thorne of the Galactic Dominion Fleet stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, watching the blue-green marble that was Earth spinning lazily in the viewport. His forearms crossed behind his chitinous back as he let out what could only be described as a snort of amusement. Well, as much of a snort as a being with external gills could manage. "So this is the planet that has the entire Galactic Council wetting themselves," he muttered to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Krasmorin. "This tiny rock, this insignificant speck of dust orbiting a mediocre yellow star." Krasmorin, a towering figure with violet skin and too many teeth, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Commander, the humans have been declared a Level 7 restricted zone. The Council warns that any approach within their solar system will result in, and I quote, extreme prejudice and overwhelming retaliation." Vex-Thorne's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "Oh, I'm absolutely terrified. A species that hasn't even figured out faster-than-light travel yet is going to show us overwhelming retaliation. I'm sure their primitive chemical rockets will be absolutely devastating against our quantum shields." The bridge crew erupted in what sounded like a combination of grinding metal and dying cats. Vex-Thorne had told a joke, and by the sacred laws of military hierarchy, everyone would laugh whether they found it funny or not. But Sub-Officer Yelp 9, the newest member of the crew, raised one of her 6 tentacles hesitantly. "Commander, sir, with all due respect, shouldn't we perhaps consider why the Council issued such a stern warning? I mean, they've catalogued over 47,000 species, and humans are the only ones with a Level 7 restriction." The laughter died instantly. Vex-Thorne's massive head swiveled toward the young officer with mechanical precision. "Are you questioning my judgment, Sub-Officer?" "No, sir. Not at all, sir. I just think maybe we should." "You think?" Vex-Thorne's voice dripped with sarcasm so thick you could pour it over pancakes. "How refreshing. A sub-officer who thinks. Tell me, Yelp 9, in your vast experience of approximately 3 standard cycles, what exactly do you think we should be afraid of? Their satellites? Their laughably primitive space stations? Or perhaps their adorable little rovers crawling around on their neighboring planets?" Yelp 9's skin flushed from purple to green, which in her species indicated extreme embarrassment. "I just meant that the Council rarely issues Level 7 restrictions without good reason, sir." "The Council," Vex-Thorne said, beginning to pace around the bridge with predatory grace, "is composed of old fools who jump at shadows. They see one species destroy a few mining operations and suddenly they're painting them as the boogeyman of the galaxy. Do you know what humans use for weapons, Sub-Officer? Explosives. Chemical. Explosives. They literally throw metal projectiles at each other using controlled chemical reactions." More grinding cat death laughter from the bridge crew. "Meanwhile," the commander continued, warming to his subject, "we have particle beam arrays that can vaporize asteroids, quantum torpedoes that can phase through any known matter, and shields that bend reality itself. But yes, by all means, let's be afraid of the species that still uses gunpowder." Lieutenant Krasmorin pulled up a holographic display showing intelligence reports from various failed expeditions to Earth's region. "Sir, if I may, there have been several reconnaissance missions that have gone missing near human space. The Hegemony lost 3 scout ships last cycle, and the Collector Syndicate reported that an entire harvesting fleet simply vanished." Vex-Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "Coincidence. Space is dangerous. Ships malfunction. Pirates exist. Are we really going to blame every lost vessel on a species that considers launching themselves into orbit strapped to barely controlled explosions as the height of technology?" "But sir," Yelp 9 persisted, clearly not learning from her previous mistake, "what if they're not as primitive as our intelligence suggests? What if what?" Vex-Thorne's patience was wearing thinner than tissue paper in a hurricane. "What if they have secret advanced technology they're hiding while they pollute their own atmosphere and fight wars over fossil fuels? What if they're pretending to be stupid while secretly planning galactic domination with their, what do they call them? Smartphones and social media platforms?" The bridge erupted in laughter again. Even Yelp 9 couldn't help but let out a small chuckle at the absurdity of the suggestion. "Exactly my point," Vex-Thorne said, spreading all four arms wide. "The very idea is ridiculous. Humans are exactly what they appear to be, a young primitive species struggling to understand basic physics while simultaneously trying not to blow themselves up with their own weapons. They're like children playing with fire while standing in a room full of explosives." He turned back to the viewport, gazing down at Earth with the expression of a predator sizing up wounded prey. "No, my dear crew. We are not going to turn tail and run from a species that still thinks faster than light travel is science fiction. We are the Galactic Dominion Fleet. We have conquered 47 star systems and absorbed the resources of countless worlds. We didn't build this empire by being afraid of every primitive backwater planet that waves a pointy stick at us." The crew cheered, their various forms of vocal expression creating a cacophony that sounded like a construction site having an argument with a music festival. "Navigation," Vex-Thorne commanded. "Set course for the third planet. Standard orbit. Let's take a closer look at these terrifying humans and see what all the fuss is about." "Sir." The navigation officer, a blob-like creature called Glick-17, spoke through his translation device. "Are you sure about this?" The Council specifically stated that. "The Council," Vex-Thorne interrupted, "is not here. I am. And I say we investigate this supposedly dangerous planet and report back to the Council that their fears are unfounded. Consider it a public service." As the massive warship began its descent toward Earth, none of the crew noticed the small, seemingly innocent satellites that had been tracking their movement since they entered the solar system. Satellites that looked remarkably primitive and harmless, with simple solar panels and basic communication arrays. What they also failed to notice was that these satellites had been quietly transmitting their position, speed, heading, and estimated technological capabilities to a series of receivers scattered across Earth's surface and orbital installations. In a bunker buried deep beneath the Colorado mountains, General Marcus Webb stood before a wall of monitors displaying the incoming alien vessel. His weathered face bore the expression of a man who had been expecting this day for a very long time. "Well, well, well," he murmured to his aide, Colonel Janet Torres. "Looks like we finally have some visitors who didn't read the Do Not Disturb sign." "Sir," Torres said, checking her tablet. "Preliminary scans show a Dominion-class warship, approximately 2 kilometers in length, armed with what appears to be standard galactic military hardware. Population scan indicates roughly 3,000 life forms aboard." Webb nodded slowly. "Send a message to all departments. Operation Hospitality is now active. Let's show our guests some good old-fashioned human hospitality." "Sir," Torres said with a hint of a smile, "should we use the standard greeting protocol?" "Oh, absolutely," Webb replied, his own smile growing wider. "The full protocol. I want to make sure they feel properly welcomed." Back aboard the Sovereign's Wrath, Vex-Thorne was enjoying what he assumed would be his moment of triumph. The planet below showed no signs of advanced defense systems, no orbital weapons platforms, no particle shields. Just a collection of primitive space stations and satellites that looked like they'd been assembled by particularly gifted chimpanzees. "Scan the planet," he ordered. "I want to know everything about their military capabilities, their technology level, and their population centers. And someone prepare a message to the Council informing them that their precious Level 7 restriction is based on nothing more than paranoid delusions." Lieutenant Krasmorin worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with confusion. "Sir, this is odd. The planet appears to be exactly as our intelligence reports suggested. No advanced energy signatures, no quantum field generators, no antimatter reactors. Their most sophisticated technology appears to be nuclear fission, and even that's being phased out in favor of something called renewable energy. It's almost quaint." "See?" Vex-Thorne gestured dramatically toward the planet. "Harmless, completely and utterly harmless. A species so peaceful they're actually moving away from nuclear technology. I'm sure the most dangerous thing down there is whatever they use to cut their food." It was at precisely that moment that the first human transmission reached their ship. "Unidentified vessel," came a calm, professional voice through their communication systems. "You are currently in violation of protected space as designated by the Galactic Council Treaty of 2387. This is your first and only warning to withdraw immediately to a distance of at least 50 astronomical units from our system." The bridge fell silent. After a moment, Vex-Thorne began to laugh. The sound was like grinding gears mixed with the death rattles of a dozen different species, which actually wasn't far from accurate given his dietary habits. "Did you hear that?" he gasped between laughs. "They're warning us. The primitives are warning us to leave. Oh, this is rich. A species that hasn't even left their own solar system is giving the Galactic Dominion Fleet orders." He activated the ship's communication array with a theatrical flourish. "This is Commander Vex-Thorne of the Galactic Dominion Fleet. To whom am I speaking?" "This is General Marcus Webb, Unified Commander of Earth's Defense Grid. Commander, I strongly advise you to comply with our request. You really don't want to be here." Vex-Thorne's laughter intensified. "General Webb, is it? How delightfully primitive. Tell me, General, what exactly are you going to do if we don't leave? Launch your chemical rockets at us? Perhaps you plan to board our ship with your projectile weapons?" There was a pause on the other end of the transmission. When Webb's voice returned, it carried a tone of what sounded almost like pity. "Commander, let me be very clear. We have absolutely no desire to harm you or your crew. We're asking nicely because we genuinely don't want any trouble. Please, for your own sake and the sake of your people, turn around and go home." "Oh, how touching," Vex-Thorne replied, his sarcasm reaching levels that could probably be weaponized. "The humans are concerned for our welfare. How absolutely precious. Tell me, General Webb, have you ever heard of quantum shielding, particle beam weapons, antimatter torpedoes? Because we have all of those things and more. What do you have? Pointed sticks and harsh language?" Another pause. This one longer. "Commander," Webb said finally, and there was definitely sadness in his voice now, "we tried to warn you." The transmission cut off. Vex-Thorne turned to his crew with the expression of someone who had just won an argument with a particularly slow child. "And there you have it, people. The terrifying humans of Earth. They tried to warn us. How considerate of them. I'm sure they're all very nice people who just want to be left alone to continue whatever it is primitive species do. Probably something involving agriculture and small-scale manufacturing." "Sir," Glix-17 called from the navigation console, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. Very faint, but..." "But what?" Vex-Thorne's good mood was starting to sour. He'd been hoping for a quick, easy victory to add to his record, not mysterious energy readings from a supposedly primitive planet. "I'm not sure, sir. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. The energy signature is. Well, it's almost like they're powering something massive. But the signals are so scattered and diverse that it's impossible to get a clear reading on what exactly they're doing." Yelp 9 tentatively raised a tentacle again. "Sir, perhaps we should..." "Should what?" Vex-Thorne snapped. "Retreat from a species that builds their computers out of silicon and copper. A species that still uses chemical combustion to launch their spacecraft. A species that communicates by vibrating air molecules. I think not." He turned back to the viewport, studying the planet below with renewed interest. Earth looked so peaceful, so defenseless. Small white clouds drifted across blue oceans, and the night side sparkled with the warm glow of primitive electrical lighting. It was almost beautiful, in a rustic, underdeveloped sort of way. "Weapons," he commanded. "Prepare a demonstration. Something small but impressive. Let's show these humans what real technology looks like. Target one of their orbital installations. Nothing inhabited, just one of their communication satellites. A little show of force should help them understand the situation." The weapons officer, a creature that resembled a cross between a lobster and a computer terminal, began working at his station. "Particle beam locked onto target, sir. One of their larger communication satellites. Shall I fire?" Fire away, Vex-Thorne said with satisfaction. Let's give them something to think about. The particle beam lanced out from the Sovereign's wrath, a brilliant lance of energy that should have instantly vaporized the targeted satellite. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The beam struck what appeared to be empty space approximately 1,000 kilometers from the satellite and simply stopped. Not absorbed, not deflected, just stopped, as if it had run into an invisible wall. The bridge fell silent except for the various background hums and beeps of the ship's systems. "What?" Vex-Thorne said slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Just happened." The weapons officer's claws clicked frantically across his console. "I don't know, sir." The beam registered a direct hit on the target coordinates, but the satellite appears to be undamaged. It's as if something intercepted the beam before it could reach the target. Something intercepted a particle. Beam? Vex-Thorne's voice was climbing back toward normal volume, which was generally a bad sign for everyone within hearing range. What could possibly intercept a particle beam? "Sir," the sensor operator, a slug-like being called Morphex Prime, spoke up hesitantly. "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations across the planet's surface. Whatever they're doing down there, they're doing a lot of it." Lieutenant Krasmorin studied his readings with growing concern. "Commander, I think we may have underestimated—" "Underestimated what?" Vex-Thorne roared. "They're using stone tools and combustion engines." What could we possibly have underestimated? It was at that moment that every system on the Sovereign's wrath suddenly shut down. Not damaged, not destroyed. Simply turned off. The lights went out, plunging the bridge into darkness. The artificial gravity failed, sending crew members floating in all directions. The life support systems stopped humming. Even the emergency power systems remained stubbornly inactive. In the eerie silence that followed, illuminated only by the pale light of Earth streaming through the viewport, Vex-Thorne found himself floating in zero gravity, trying to process what had just happened. Then the lights came back on. Everything returned to normal as suddenly as it had stopped. Gravity reasserted itself, dropping everyone unceremoniously back to the deck. Systems hummed back to life as if nothing had happened. "Report!" Vex-Thorne barked, trying to maintain some semblance of command authority while picking himself up off the floor. "All systems nominal, sir," Morphex Prime reported, his voice shaking slightly. "Everything is functioning perfectly. It's as if someone simply turned us off and then turned us back on again." Vex-Thorne stared at the slug-like creature. "That's impossible. Our systems are protected by quantum encryption and hardened against any form of electromagnetic interference. Nothing short of a direct antimatter explosion could shut down our entire ship simultaneously." "Nevertheless, sir," Krasmorin said quietly, "that appears to be exactly what happened." The communication system crackled to life again. "Commander Vex-Thorne," came General Webb's voice, still calm and professional. "I hope that little demonstration helped clarify our position. We have absolutely no desire to harm you or your crew, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Please, turn around and go home." Vex-Thorne found his voice after several seconds of stunned silence. "How did you do that? How did you shut down our systems?" "Commander," Webb replied, and there was genuine sympathy in his voice, "there are some questions you really don't want the answers to. Please, just leave. Consider this a friendly warning between civilized species." "Friendly warning?" Vex-Thorne's voice cracked with a combination of rage and dawning fear. "You just demonstrated the ability to completely disable a Dominion-class warship. That's not a friendly warning. That's a threat of the highest order." "No, Commander," Webb said sadly. "That wasn't a threat. That was us being polite. This is your last chance to withdraw peacefully." The transmission ended again, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Yelp 9, who had been quietly working at her station throughout the exchange, suddenly looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching our position. Fast." "Define fast," Vex-Thorne said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Approximately 75% the speed of light, sir, and accelerating. Every head on the bridge turned toward the viewport, straining to see whatever was approaching them at such an impossible speed. "There!" shouted Krasmorin, pointing at a spot in space that had been empty just seconds before. A small object, no larger than a shuttlecraft, had appeared seemingly out of nowhere and was approaching their position with casual, almost leisurely movements. Despite its small size, the energy readings coming from it were off the charts. "Shields up!" Vex-Thorne commanded, some of his military training finally overriding his shock. "All weapons, target that craft. Fire at will. The Sovereign's wrath unleashed everything in its considerable arsenal. Particle beams, quantum torpedoes, antimatter missiles, and plasma cannons, all converged on the small craft in a display of firepower that should have been capable of cracking a moon. The small craft didn't dodge, didn't evade, didn't even seem to notice the incoming destruction. The weapons simply stopped working when they got close to it. Beams dissipated, missiles powered down, torpedoes changed course and harmlessly flew past their target. The craft continued its approach, completely unaffected. "Sir!" Glix-17 called from navigation, panic clearly audible in his translated voice. "There are more of them. Dozens of them, approaching from all directions." Sure enough, similar craft were appearing throughout local space, all converging on the Sovereign's wrath with the same leisurely confidence as the first. "How many?" Vex-Thorne asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. 137 so far, sir, and more keep appearing." Vex-Thorne stared out at the growing fleet of small human craft, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Each one was roughly the size of a shuttlecraft, yet somehow they were casually neutralizing the weapons of one of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. "Sir," Morphex Prime said quietly, "I'm reading energy signatures from those craft that are, well, they're impossible. According to our instruments, each one of those small ships is generating more power than our entire vessel." "That can't be right," Vex-Thorne said automatically. "Check your instruments." "I have, sir. Multiple times. Either our sensors are completely malfunctioning or those craft are each powered by something that makes our antimatter reactors look like chemical batteries." The communication system activated once more. "Commander Vex-Thorne," came a new voice, younger than General Webb's but carrying the same note of patient authority. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Corps. You are now completely surrounded by vessels of the human Navy. You have 3 choices." Vex-Thorne found himself asking, "What are my choices?" before his pride could stop him. 1. You can surrender your vessel and submit to escort out of our system. 2. You can attempt to fight your way out, which will not end well for you. Or 3. You can activate your faster-than-light drive and attempt to flee, which also will not end well for you." "And if I choose option 1? Vex-Thorne asked, hating himself for even considering surrender to a primitive species. "You'll be escorted safely to the edge of our system and released with a message for your superiors. Stay away from Earth. We won't be as polite next time." Vex-Thorne looked around his bridge at his crew. Every face showed the same expression of dawning horror as they realized that everything they thought they knew about humans had been completely, catastrophically wrong. "Captain Chen," he said finally, his voice hoarse with defeat. "What are you people?" There was a long pause before Chen answered, and when she did, her voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone who heard it. "Commander, we're the species that the Galactic Council tried to warn you about." The silence on the bridge of the Sovereign's wrath stretched like a funeral shroud. Commander Vex-Thorne stared out at the swarm of human vessels surrounding his ship, each one impossibly small, yet radiating enough power to make his flagship look like a child's toy. "Sir?" Lieutenant Krasmorin whispered, his violet skin having faded to a sickly gray color. "Your orders." Vex-Thorne's mandibles clicked together nervously. Pride warred with survival instinct in his alien mind. He was a Dominion commander, descendant of a warrior race that had conquered star systems when humans were still living in caves. The very idea of surrendering to what should have been a technologically inferior species made his chitinous hide crawl with shame. But then he looked at the sensor readings again. 137 human craft, each one generating energy signatures that defied everything he knew about physics. And more were still appearing. "Captain Chen," he said into the communication array, his voice barely steady, "I need to understand something. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports show that your species barely understands quantum mechanics. You're using chemical rockets, for crying out loud?" Chen's laughter came through the speakers, and it was the most terrifying sound Vex-Thorne had ever heard. Not because it was harsh or menacing, but because it was genuinely amused. Like an adult watching a child try to explain why the sky was green. "Commander, let me ask you something. If you were a relatively young species surrounded by older, more aggressive civilizations, would you advertise your true capabilities to the entire galaxy?" The words hit Vex-Thorne like a quantum torpedo to the brain. "You've been hiding this whole time?" "Commander," came General Webb's voice, rejoining the conversation, "what do you think would happen if the galaxy knew that humans had solved faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and matter conversion 3 centuries ago?" Yelp 9, who had been quietly monitoring communications, suddenly gasped. "Sir, I'm detecting transmission signals between the human craft. They're not using any recognizable communication protocols." "What are they using?" Vex-Thorne asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. "It appears to be some form of instantaneous quantum entanglement communication, sir. 0 delay across any distance, but that's theoretically impossible unless you have complete control over quantum field manipulation at a subatomic level." Captain Chen's voice returned, carrying a note of what sounded almost like pity. "Commander, we've been monitoring your species for approximately 200 years. Your technology is impressive by galactic standards, but you're still using brute force approaches to problems that require finesse." "Brute force?" Vex-Thorne's voice cracked with indignation. "We have antimatter reactors, particle beam weapons, quantum shields." "Yes," Chen replied patiently, "and they're all very big, very powerful, and very inefficient. It's like using a sledgehammer to perform surgery, effective but crude." On the tactical display, one of the human craft moved closer to the Sovereign's wrath. As it approached, detailed scans revealed something that made every crew member's blood run cold. The craft wasn't just small, it was occupied by a single human. "One pilot?" Glix 17's translation device practically squeaked with disbelief. "That entire craft is operated by one being." "Actually," Chen said, apparently monitoring their scans, "I'm not really piloting it. The ship and I are integrated. Think of it as a partnership rather than a traditional pilot-vessel relationship." Lieutenant Krasmorin looked at his commander with growing horror. "Sir, if a single human in a craft the size of a shuttlecraft can generate those kinds of power readings—" "Don't," Vex-Thorne said quickly. "Don't finish that thought." But it was too late. Every crew member was doing the math. If one human in a small craft could neutralize their weapons and shut down their entire ship, what could humanity do with a full-sized fleet? "Sir," Morphex Prime called from the sensor station, his slug-like form practically vibrating with terror. "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations from the planet's surface. It's like the entire planet is waking up." On the main display, Earth suddenly didn't look quite so primitive anymore. Energy signatures were appearing across every continent. Structures were rising from what had appeared to be empty ocean, and the orbital space around the planet was revealing installations that their sensors had somehow completely missed during their initial approach. "Holographic projection," Webb explained helpfully. "We've found that most species see what they expect to see. If you expect to find a primitive world using fossil fuels and chemical rockets, that's exactly what your sensors will report. Confirmation bias is remarkably consistent across different species." "You've been studying us," Vex-Thorne said, the full implications finally sinking in. "All of us, every species in the galaxy. For quite some time, yes, Chen confirmed. It's amazing how much you can learn about someone when they think you're too primitive to be worth hiding from. Did you know that the hegemony has been planning to invade Rigel 7 for the past 30 years? Or that the Collector Syndicate has been secretly harvesting sentient species from the Outer Rim? The bridge fell silent. This information was classified at the highest levels of galactic government, if humans had access to it. How long? Vex-Thorne asked quietly. How long have you been capable of this? Define this, Webb replied. If you mean spaceflight, we've been traveling between stars for about 400 years. If you mean the kind of technology that can shut down your ship without breaking a sweat, that's been around for roughly 3 centuries. If you mean the ability to completely remake matter at a subatomic level, we figured that out about the time your species was still using chemical weapons on each other. Impossible, Vex-Thorne breathed. If you've had this technology for so long, why haven't you expanded? Why haven't you claimed territory? Built an empire? Chen's voice carried a note of genuine confusion. Why would we want to do that? We have everything we need right here. We can create any resource we require, travel anywhere we want to go, and live in peace on our own world. Why would we want to conquer other planets? Because that's what advanced species do, Vex-Thorne protested. They expand. They explore. They dominate. Do they? Webb asked. Or is that just what young species do before they mature enough to realize that conquest is the most inefficient way to achieve prosperity? Yelp 9, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Sir, I'm detecting multiple incoming signatures, large ones. It appears to be... Oh no. What is it? Vex-Thorne demanded. It's the rest of our fleet, sir. The entire 7th Squadron is dropping out of hyperspace. Sure enough, massive Dominion warships were materializing throughout the system. 12 dreadnoughts, 30 cruisers, and over 100 support vessels, all bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Admiral Corex Prime's voice boomed across the communication channels. Commander Vex-Thorne, what is your status? We detected weapons fire and communications with hostile forces. Vex-Thorne looked around his bridge, noting the expressions of absolute terror on every face. Admiral, I strongly recommend that you maintain your current position and do not, under any circumstances, approach the 3rd planet. Explain yourself, Commander. Are you under duress? Before Vex-Thorne could respond, Captain Chen's voice cut across their communication channel. Admiral Corex Prime of the Galactic Dominion Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Corps. You are trespassing in protected space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Corex Prime's laughter could have shattered glass on 12 different worlds. A human! How delightful! Commander Vex-Thorne, are you seriously telling me that you've been neutralized by these primitive mammals? Admiral, Vex-Thorne said urgently, you don't understand. They're not primitive, they're... Enough! Corex Prime cut him off. All vessels, battle formation, let's show these humans what happens when they threaten the Galactic Dominion. The Dominion Fleet spread out in perfect military formation, presenting a wall of firepower that should have been capable of reducing any known defense to subatomic particles. It was an impressive sight, the kind of display that had cowed 1,000 worlds into submission. It was also, as it turned out, a spectacular mistake. Admiral, Chen said, and there was real sadness in her voice. We tried to warn you. Space around Earth suddenly filled with human vessels. Not dozens this time, but thousands. They appeared without warning, without energy signatures, without any indication that they had been approaching. One moment empty space, the next moment occupied by a fleet that made the Dominion Squadron look like a small scouting party. Where did they come from? Admiral Corex Prime's voice had lost much of its bluster. We've been here the whole time, Webb explained calmly. You've just been looking in the wrong dimensions. Humans solved multidimensional travel about the same time we figured out how to manipulate quantum fields. Most species are still trapped in 3-dimensional thinking. The human fleet wasn't arranged in any recognizable military formation. Instead, they seemed to be positioned almost casually throughout the system, as if they had simply materialized wherever was convenient. Admiral Corex Prime, Chen continued. You now have the same 3 options I offered Commander Vex-Thorne. Surrender and be escorted out, attempt to fight, or attempt to flee. I strongly recommend option 1. The Galactic Dominion does not surrender to primitives, Corex Prime roared. All vessels, open fire! Show these humans the price of threatening our empire. The Dominion fleet unleashed everything they had. The combined firepower of over 100 warships filled space with enough destructive energy to crack a moon. Particle beams, antimatter torpedoes, plasma cannons, and quantum disruptors all converged on the human fleet in a display of force that had never been successfully resisted in galactic history. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't raise shields. They didn't even seem to notice. Every weapon, every torpedo, every beam of destructive energy simply stopped working the moment it came within 1,000 kilometers of a human vessel. Not deflected, not absorbed, just turned off. Impossible, Admiral Corex Prime whispered. Actually, Chen said conversationally, it's quite simple once you understand that energy and matter are just different expressions of the same fundamental forces. We're not stopping your weapons so much as convincing them that they don't want to work anymore. One of the human vessels, no larger than a fighter craft, approached the Admiral's flagship. As it came closer, every system on the massive dreadnought began shutting down, just as had happened to the Sovereign's Wrath. But this time, the systems didn't come back online. Admiral Corex Prime, came a new human voice, young and cheerful. This is Lieutenant Jamie Rodriguez. I've taken the liberty of disabling your vessel's weapons, engines, and life support systems. Don't worry, I've left your air recycling and artificial gravity functional. I'm not a monster. You've disabled our entire ship with a fighter craft? Corex Prime's voice was barely above a whisper. Oh, this isn't a fighter, Rodriguez replied cheerfully. This is my personal transport. I was actually on my way to visit my grandmother on Mars when I got called in for this. Would you like to see what our actual military vessels look like? Before anyone could respond, something appeared in space that defied every known law of physics and engineering. It wasn't built so much as it was sculpted from what appeared to be solid energy, a construct of pure light and force that stretched for dozens of kilometers in every direction. That, Chen said with obvious pride, is the HMS Determination. It's not our largest ship, but it's certainly one of the prettiest. The energy readings from the massive construct were so far beyond anything in Dominion databases that several sensor operators' equipment simply gave up and displayed error messages. How? Admiral Corex Prime asked, his voice hollow with defeat. How what? Webb asked. How do we build ships out of organized energy? How do we travel through dimensions that don't technically exist? How do we manipulate matter and energy as easily as you manipulate chemical compounds? The answer to all of those questions is the same. We learned to think differently. Sir, came a voice from one of the Dominion cruisers. We're detecting similar energy constructs throughout the system, hundreds of them, all larger than anything in our fleet. Chen's voice returned, carrying that same note of patient explanation. Gentlemen, let me be clear about something. What you're seeing right now isn't our military. It's our Coast Guard. Our actual military is busy with more important matters in other galaxies. The word galaxies hung in space like a death sentence. Other galaxies, Vex-Thorne managed to croak. Oh yes, Webb said casually. Did you really think we'd limit ourselves to just the Milky Way? There's a whole universe out there to explore. We've been in contact with civilizations in Andromeda for over 2 centuries now. Lovely people, by the way. Much more civilized than most of the species in this galaxy. Admiral Corex Prime's voice came over the communication channel, defeated and broken. What do you want from us? Nothing, Chen replied simply. We want absolutely nothing from you except for you to leave us alone. Go back to your Dominion, Tell your superiors what you've seen here, and spread the word. Earth is off limits. We'll defend ourselves if necessary, but we'd much rather just be left in peace." "And if we refuse?" Corex Prime asked, though his heart clearly wasn't in the question. "Then you'll learn why the Galactic Council issued a Level 7 restriction on our space," Webb said quietly. "And trust me, Admiral, that's not a lesson you want to learn." Lieutenant Rodriguez's cheerful voice came over the channel again. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to check your star charts when you get home. We've taken the liberty of updating them with accurate information about human space. Turns out we control a bit more territory than your intelligence services thought." On the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, Yelp 9 was staring at her console in absolute horror. "Sir, according to these readings, human-controlled space extends throughout over 40% of this galaxy. They've been hiding entire star systems from our sensors." 40%? Vex-Thorne's voice cracked. "Actually, it's closer to 60% now," Chen corrected. "We've been busy while you've all been arguing over the remaining scraps. But don't worry, we're not interested in conquest. We just set up research stations and observation posts. Most of the time, local species never even know we're there." The full implications of humanity's true capabilities were finally sinking in across both fleets. They weren't dealing with a primitive species that had gotten lucky. They were confronting a civilization so far advanced that they made the combined might of the galactic community look like children playing with sticks. "Sir," Morphex Prime called from his station, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from across the galaxy. It appears that human installations are revealing themselves on thousands of worlds. They've been everywhere, watching everything." Admiral Corex Prime's voice was barely audible. "How long have you been studying us?" "Since you first developed faster-than-light travel," Webb replied. "We've been keeping an eye on galactic civilization, making sure it doesn't get too out of hand. Sometimes we nudge things in more productive directions. The peace treaty between the Rigel Confederacy and the Vega Alliance, that was us. The technological breakthrough that allowed the Centauri to develop clean energy, also us. The mysterious disappearance of the destroyer cult's entire fleet. Well, they were about to commit genocide on 17 different worlds." "You've been manipulating galactic politics for centuries?" Vex-Thorne asked. "Not manipulating," Chen corrected. "Guiding, helping, preventing the worst impulses of younger species from causing too much damage. Think of us as cosmic babysitters." "Babysitters?" Admiral Corex Prime's voice rose in indignation. "Admiral," Webb said patiently, "your species is roughly 12,000 years old as a spacefaring civilization. Ours is older than that by a considerable margin. From our perspective, most galactic species are still learning how to walk." Lieutenant Rodriguez chimed in again. "Oh, and Admiral? We've been monitoring your communications. We know about the invasion fleet you have hidden in the Proxima sector. Stand them down. We won't ask twice." The silence that followed this revelation was profound. The Proxima invasion fleet was the Dominion's most closely guarded secret. A massive armada positioned to strike at the heart of the Galactic Council if negotiations failed. "How could you possibly know about Proxima?" Corex Prime whispered. "Because we have ships there too," Rodriguez said brightly. "Has anyone ever told you that your stealth technology is adorable? It's like watching children hide behind curtains and thinking they're invisible." Chen's voice returned, carrying finality. "Gentlemen, this conversation is over. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw all Dominion forces from human space. After that, we'll start escorting you out personally, and I promise you won't enjoy the experience." "And if we return?" Vex-Thorne asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you'll discover why we're called humanity's last hope," Webb said grimly. "Because by the time we're done, hope is about all that'll be left." The transmission ended, leaving both Dominion fleets floating in space, surrounded by human vessels that casually defied every known law of physics and military strategy. Admiral Corex Prime was the first to break the silence. "All vessels, prepare for immediate withdrawal. Set course for Dominion space, maximum velocity." "Sir?" came a confused voice from one of the cruisers. "We're retreating." "We're surviving," Corex Prime replied grimly. "Stand down all weapons and prepare to withdraw. And send a priority message to Dominion Command. Update Earth's threat assessment to Level 10. "Sir," the communications officer replied, "Level 10 doesn't exist. It does now." As the Dominion fleet began its withdrawal, Vex-Thorne found himself staring one last time at the blue-green world that had shattered everything he thought he knew about the universe. Earth looked exactly the same as it had when they'd arrived, peaceful and unassuming, giving no hint of the unimaginable power that lay hidden beneath its deceptively primitive surface. "Sir," Yelp9 said quietly, "what do we tell the Council?" Vex-Thorne considered the question for a long moment. "We tell them the truth, that humans aren't just more advanced than we thought. They're more advanced than we can comprehend, and we pray to whatever gods we still believe in that they continue to be as merciful as they are powerful." As the last Dominion vessel disappeared into hyperspace, the human fleet began to fade from view, returning to whatever dimensional space they normally occupied. Soon, Earth's region of space looked exactly as it had before, empty, peaceful, and completely unremarkable. Except now, everyone knew the truth. Humanity had been hiding in plain sight for centuries, watching, learning, and quietly ensuring that the galaxy's younger species didn't destroy themselves or anyone else. They were the guardians that no one knew existed, the parents watching over children who thought they were all alone in the universe. And now, finally, the children knew they were being watched. The question was, would they be wise enough to behave?